Hello, it's John Heaton. Today I'm going to discuss a Rolling Stones live DVD, which I was just watching the other day because I just finally got my TV hooked back up to a stereo system because my speakers packed in a few years ago, and I linked up the JBL Extreme speaker, and remarkable volume coming out of that and perfectly good enough to watch a concert. So I went back and watched a few music concerts, including this one, which was the Rolling Stones tour of the US, taken from the tour of the US 1978. So the album Some Girls had come out in June. I think the single preceded it in May, Miss You. And this particular concert was recorded in the Will Rogers Auditorium in Fort Worth, Texas. And I think it was an indoor auditorium. The weather was very hot in the middle of summer, and I did get this album not immediately at the time, but about 18 months later, something like that. But it made a great impression on me because the Stones seemed to be competing with the punk scene and being absolutely equal to it, because this album is pretty raunchy and pretty damn good. Probably slightly prefer Sticky Fingers, but not much in it, and great cover, controversial cover, as we know, with the faces. And some of the ladies depicted here complained, and so they had to remove their pictures, and hence the version I got had this Pardon Our Appearance cover under reconstruction, which was an alternative because they had to get rid of some of the pictures. So I remember when at my confirmation in November '79, I was kind of rather hoping my parents would give me this Some Girls album as a confirmation present, but instead they gave me this, which is altogether a more appropriate present for a confirmation, I admit. I acknowledge that now. It's foolish to even expect a Rolling Stones album, but anyway, that's just a little bit of trivia for you. This is a very well recorded concert, and considering Keith had just come off 10 years of heroin, he looks in pretty good shape, and he's playing very well, and the whole band seems extremely well rehearsed. Probably better in comparison to some of their previous tours. I mean, I don't have the one in the Goat's Head Soup box set, that DVD. I've seen footage of them on the '76 tour. I've got the album Love You Live from that tour. I've heard various live performances from '71. I know there's a lot of live stuff released nowadays from the Stones, from their so-called archives, and I haven't checked out all of it. Normally I prefer the studio album, and in the case of this I would prefer the studio album, but so I don't have it on CD, but on DVD visually it's very interesting because firstly it's very good to see the Stones sort of youthful and if not in their prime, then very, very nearly in their prime, and they look so young. Considering that the image that the Stones have had for the last 20, 30 years as being kind of aging rockers, being somewhat a parody of themselves, this is altogether more refreshing. And just before I get to the concert, there's some pretty good extras here. There's a hilarious interview with Mick Jagger and Dan Aykroyd, with Dan Aykroyd doing an impression of Tom Snyder from The Tomorrow Show, and doing a pretty good impression. It's hilarious, and Mick barely managing to keep a straight face. That's worth watching. And then a version of sort of mini concert that they did again on Saturday Night Live. They did Beast of Burden, Respectable and Shattered, I think, on the same show. And there's a further interview with them, and there's a Mick Jagger interview from 2011. So to the concert, well, it was the Ronnie Wood's first album where he was an official member of the band. He had appeared on the cover of Black and Blue, if you remember, but he wasn't credited as a full band member until this album, Some Girls. And we've got joining the five lineup, which was Bill Wyman, Keith, Mick, Charlie and Ronnie. We have Ian Stewart, the faithful pianist who died in 1985, sadly, Ian McLagan, from the Faces, who I was noticing played with Dylan on the '84 tour, have a solo album of his where Ringo is guesting on, and he plays very tasteful keyboards here. You can particularly hear him to prominence on the song Miss You. And then you've also got a guy called Doug Kershaw on violin on the track Far Away Eyes, and that's very interesting. Bill Wyman apparently had bumped into him previously, a few weeks previous, and had asked him to come along. So great backing vocals all the way through the concert, particularly on Starfucker, with Ronnie singing the backing vocals with Mick, and occasionally it's occasionally it's Keith and Ronnie singing the backing vocals, and occasionally it's Mick and Keith singing the joint vocals, like on Beast of Burden, for example, it's Mick and Keith. So they start off the concert with what I think is a cover, Let It Rock. Sounds like an old rock and roll cover. I'm not sure who wrote that. Sorry, does it say? And then it goes into All Down the Line, a superb version of that song from Exile on Main Street, first song on side 4. Very good version. Then a good version of Honky Tonk Woman, good version of Star Star, and then they move into the new album, and they do no fewer than 7 songs from Some Girls. And I was comparing that to the track listings from the other tours, and in most cases they don't do more than 3 or 4 numbers from the latest album. But I did notice that on the '81 tour they did at least 6 numbers from To You, and sometimes did tops as well. So I'm not sure if they did tops on the same night as the other 6, but you're approaching the kind of same amount of material from To You as you had on here. But I was pretty impressed that they gave the new album good level of prominence here, presumably because they were pretty proud of it. I mean, When the Whip Comes Down is a great song to do live, with Mick camping it up with Ronnie. Beast of Burden is just an all-time classic. Even at the time I think I realised what a great song it was, and with hindsight it's aged extremely well. Then Miss You was the single, which is done in extended fashion here pretty well. Again, probably prefer the album version if push comes to shove, but very interesting to watch. Thoroughly recommend this concert. Tremendous visual treat and oral treat if you can connect up decent speakers. Then Just In My Imagination, that's a cover song from the album, good version here. Shattered, it's a bold attempt to match the album version, but it comes up short a little bit because the album version is so storming. I guess they had some overdubbed guitar on that instrumental section towards the end, and which they don't have on the live here. But it's a brave attempt, and it's a pretty good version, to be honest, probably better than the subsequent versions when they tried this song. Respectable is done at a fast pace, and sometimes the Stones are guilty of doing songs too fast live, but in most cases on this album I think they get away with doing that because the musicianship is so good and their energy level and the vocals are so strong that I didn't mind as much as I normally do. But Respectable is a little fast, but it's decent. Far Away Eyes is glorious to see in concert because Mick goes to the piano and then kind of changes to another piano after the first verse. I'm not sure what was wrong with the first one. And you've got Ronnie playing the pedal steel, and then you've got this guy, Doug Kershaw, coming on with the violin, and great harmony vocals from Keith, and a great country pastiche with Mick singing in his best American accent. It's a great song, and it works surprisingly well in concert. One might think it was a bit too slow to do in concert, but it was very well received. Then Love in Vain, we're going back to the older material now, and the classic track from Let It Bleed, which never grows old. Tumbling Dice here is done not much faster than the original. I've seen them do this faster, and it's a decent version, although one can't beat the Exile version, with particularly Charlie's drumming towards the end, which he's not quite able to replicate here live, but it's still a good storming version. And then Keith does a very vigorous version of his song Happy from Exile, which is very creditable. It might even be better than the original, actually, because the original only had half the Stones playing on it, I seem to remember. And we've got Chuck Berry cover, Sweet Little 16, and then a good version of Brown Sugar and Jumping Jack Flash, although they probably do those last songs too fast in my opinion, but fairly small criticism. I love the way that Mick gets buckets of water from the side of the stage and hurls the water over the audience, much to their delight. Bill Wyman is on his hilarious or notorious way he has in a concert of just standing absolutely still, playing his bass very competently, but almost looking bored, and never cracking a smile, never. Keith and Ronnie hamming it up, dancing around a little bit, not as much as they do these days, but they're on great form. Mick is on tremendous form in this concert, changing his outfit, taking off his shirt towards the end, saying outrageous things between the songs, which I won't repeat. It's just great to see this concert again, and particularly with the good sound. So that's the only reason I haven't watched it much over the years since I bought it, because my sound system packed up, but now that's fixed. So Some Girls, one of their greatest, I was going to say latter day, one of their greatest 70s albums, should we put it like that, and they would struggle to match the quality, the sheer excellence of this album after this album, in my opinion, but that's a mark of the quality of this album more than anything else. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.